Everybody, Chris Webster here to talk about one of the latest supporters to the Archaeology Podcast Network, The Motley Fool. Now, I've been investing in the stock market through various applications for a few years now, and everybody who's listening to this can benefit from that sort of investment for the long-term financial planning. And also, I know the hosts of these podcasts can benefit because as archaeologists, like none of us get retirement. We all have to kind of fend for ourselves. So investing in the stock market is a good idea, but not everybody can do it. And look, we get it. The market is complicated and confusing, and to many of us, it simply doesn't make sense. In fact, where do you even start? Take all of the guesswork out of it with the Motley Fool Stock Advisor. The Motley Fool has been around for over 25 years and has been spot on in recommending some of the world's most important companies before they hit the big time. I'm talking about Amazon, Tesla, Netflix, Starbucks, all before they exploded in value. With their easy to use and super informative service, Stock Advisor, you could join the ranks before they potentially find the next big thing. After all, their average stock recommendation is up over 400% as of April 10th, 2023. And no need to be intimidated by financial jargon or market complexities. As the name suggests, these guys don't take themselves too seriously. Now, finances, that's a different story. Their friendly and relaxed approach has helped over 700,000 people move closer to financial independence, all while beating the market and having fun. New members can access Stock Advisor for only $89 for their first year, a full $110 off the full list price. Don't sit on the sidelines and think about what could have happened. Visit fool.com/APN to start your investing journey today. That's $110 discount off of $199 per year list price. Membership will renew annually at the then current list price. So again, check the link in the show notes of this episode.
You're listening to the Archaeology Podcast Network.
This is the Archaeology Podcast. It's the show where we pull back the veil of cultural resources management, archaeology, and discuss the issues that everyone is concerned about. Welcome to the podcast.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to the CRM podcast, episode 295. This is Doug. I will be your host for this episode. I think it's been like years since I've hosted, but looking forward to it. And with me as well, everyone in California, because apparently the podcast is like me plus the Cali crew. So we have...
And the Nomad Chris.
Yeah, well, sometimes Chris is also like traveling, I think it's the East Coast right now, but sometimes he's Cali as well.
Yeah.
So sorry, let me introduce our other host. There's Heather.
Hello, everyone.
There's Bill.
Good morning.
And last but not least, there's Andrew.
What's up, guys?
All right, and on today's episode, we're going to be picking up from a previous episode. We were talking about professionalism and dressing and how you dress up for conferences, for interviews, and various things like that. But, how you dress is just sort of one way of how you present, how you sort of signal who you are and what you're about to other people. So this episode, we're going to take that a bit broader. And we're going to look at, how do you signal to other people your professional interests, that you're a professional person, or just general aspects that you're trying to get across to different audiences. So we're gonna start this out there. Bill was not at our last podcast for this, and we talked quite a bit about sort of conference dressing and, how we present ourselves in conferences and somewhat dress up. And I think we'll start there. But we're going to be covering a whole range of topics from, your email footer to your dress to what journals you publish in, all that sort of thing. So I don't know where we're going to start. I think I'm just going to throw a random one out there and start with email footers. How do you guys do your email footers?
Well, I guess I can go first because I never put any of the slogans like, the place where I work, it's some people have just line after line of resources and all this different stuff and signaling and all these different. I just have myself, my title. That's it. My name and my title. That's all I have.
So you don't do anything like RPA or?
Nope.
Oh, nice.
Nope. I don't have PhD on there. Anything. It's just Bill White, Associate Professor, University of California, Berkeley. That's it. And I don't have any more of the like links to this, or I don't have a tagline or a slogan. I don't have any kind of witty quote or anything. It was great because last year I got associate professor. So for the first time in 6 years, I changed it from assistant to associate. And someday if I get full professor, it'll just say professor. So that's all I have.
And Bill, is that a conscious decision?
Yeah, well, so, it seems like a lot of people send these emails and they've got the flavor of the day, the cause of the day going on. For a long time, it was Black Lives Matter. Everybody had all these Black Lives Matter things all over their signature. And it was just basically virtue signaling because, the people that at least many of the people who were sending the emails, first of all, weren't going to really do anything. They were just sending it out there because that's what was going on. And, since then, those folks have changed their taglines to the new cause or whatever, right? So you can tell the longer you know them that they're just basically an actor that's just, putting this stuff on there because they think it makes them look good and they think that the receiver somehow cares about it, right? I don't have a phone number, otherwise I'd put that on there. I used to have a phone in my office and they moved a bookshelf in front of the phone jack, so now I don't have a phone. Otherwise, I would have had the phone number on there. And basically, like, my work email is to contact me about work stuff. It's not for us to talk about, campaigns, and donations and resources for all different kinds of health issues and all different kinds of stuff. It's for you to ask me a question about work and for me to respond about work, right? I have other emails and they don't have any tagline at all. That's what my friends would contact me over, right? And then I have my other hidden social media accounts. That's where I would do my virtue signaling about, what I care about and all these different things, right? But at work, I just work at a place. It's a state agency. I do a job, and that's the only thing that's on there.
Man, I agree with Bill 110%. Mine's like exactly the same. I have the exact same story. I love, Bill, that you brought up the virtue signaling quote of the week, which I can't stand. So for myself, I'm just the same. But the only thing different is next to my name, it does say PhD/RPA. That's it. But the rest, it's simple, it's clean, and it's professional. And that's it. And also, my phone doesn't work either.
Heather, what about you?
I agree 100%. And just want to add, first of all, I do think it's exploitive to have these taglines. I think, yes, it's definitely a virtue signaling. And along that line, I try not to assume what people are thinking, but to me, it does seem exploitive. You have people that, for whatever campaign or fight or cause it is, that take these causes very seriously, dedicate their lives to them, work hard to really try to make people's lives better, whatever that cause is, and then to go and take that cause and put it on your line in order to promote yourself, because that's what it seems like it is. I take offense to that. I think it's exploitive, and it's disrespectful to the people that really dedicate their lives to those causes. And yeah, to me itself, it's self-centeredness. But anyway, so I would never put that on there. So there's a quote, which everybody I'm sure has heard, right? And people have associated it with different people, but Abraham Lincoln is who I've heard. It says, better to remain silent and be thought a fool than to open your mouth and remove all doubt. So it's better to not say something and to be neutral on your signature block than to put things out there that, really don't belong and can impact how people, the decisions that people make with how they're going to interact with you. So along that line, I agree with what both Bill and Andrew said, that it's not appropriate. But, it's a free country. People can do what they want. But it's not a good thing. It's not the smartest move to make. You can believe all those things and you can go and work towards them on your free time. And if it's appropriate in the work that you work, in the work setting environment that you're in to talk about them, then that's a decision you're going to make. But I think that putting it on an email when you don't know who is seeing it, and it's not out of fear of retribution, it's just you don't want to alienate people.
Yeah, it immediately politicizes the situation. And it's like, dude, I'm just trying to send an email about a professional gathering or something,
Right. And some of these little taglines mean different things to different people. So even though maybe it means one thing to you and the other person may not argue it and actually may agree with you, they don't know that. So now you've associated yourself with maybe a group you're not even associated with.
Right.
So I don't think it's a professional. I don't think it's professional. I wouldn't.
Well, I mean, my other thing is too, the email that we're talking about here is the professional one, right? So most of us have many different emails. And so if you want to have, soup of all different kinds of stuff at the end of your email on your personal one that's reflecting all this other stuff, there's nothing wrong with that. But like I said, I work for a state agency. So some of the stuff, taking positions, right? Like I work for the government. And so when you start to think about that, and then you're putting a whole bunch of different layers of different things on top of it, you could be inadvertently walking yourself into trouble without even really knowing that you're doing that, right? Especially if you're, some of these things are with other governments, right? And so supporting different governments, supporting different groups that might be, against the government or different, like you can't control what other people are going to do in these groups that are outside of your institution. And so sometimes I feel like putting that kind of stuff on there could possibly navigate you in trouble with your employer. But the other thing about it is that it changes, your allegiances are going to change. What you care about throughout your career and your life are going to change. And so when people are getting emails for you over, years or weeks or whatever, and you're constantly shifting your gears from, this thing and feeding these people and caring about this thing. And then all of a sudden you're against that organization and everything else. And you're constantly sending this message across. It's like you were saying before, some people have devoted their entire lives to these causes, and you're just hopping on the bandwagon. And so it definitely shows that, first of all, if 5 years ago you were all about this one thing, what have you done over the 5 years for that thing, right?
Right.
It makes me ask that question. And if the answer is you've donated a couple $100s over 5 years, is that really actually is that social change, right?
Mm-hmm.
Or is it just you putting something on there, a commercial that's showing like what you want the world to think you are, right? So if you're really serious, you're going to get out there, you're going to get your hands dirty, and you're really going to pour it all into a thing, I'll know, because I'll keep seeing you saying something about housing dogs and, helping animals and all this other stuff. And I know that you really care about that because for 7 years you've been telling me that you care all about that. Okay, that's great. But if you're just, a young career person and you're putting it all over everything and then switching it up every 12 months when there's a new cause or a new crisis, then that just basically shows me you don't really have any allegiance. You're not really invested in something, and that you're just, all over the place. And then going on to professionalism, as I get to know you longer, and as I see you change all the time, I know that when things get tough or you get bored or something else, you're not going to be there. Like you're not going to stick with this because you've switched your cause that you've been focused on so many times since I've known you that, how can I know that you're going to be there for the long haul for these longer projects?
Right. And Bill, you brought up young people too, which I agree. I think young people, they don't know any better and they just see this happening and they feel like they're almost supposed to, they're supposed to put the quote or whatever. And it's like, no. Just keep it clean, Yeah.
And actually a lot of companies are not even going to allow you to do that. So if you ever did decide that you still wanted to ignore our advice and do it anyway, I highly suggest you talk to your supervisor and make sure that that's allowed on a signature block. Some companies won't even allow you to do it.
Wow. So I did not expect us to take this much time on signature
I know.
block. I have one hopefully final wrap up on that. Before we get to that, I was going to say is so you guys are touching on something that I think is quite important. So we use the term virtue signaling. And I think the best thing I heard someone say was everyone virtue signals. And this is a bit of what this episode's about is how are you signaling, what you do. I think we use virtue signaling as a derogatory term when we're we don't like the signals that people are sending. But I would get that across is everyone is always signaling something, whether you're consciously doing it or not. And so this is what we're talking about is probably a bit on the sort of conscious side, what we think about and how we signal. And I would say now switching back to the footers of emails, it's a bigger deal in the UK where you can get a lot more post nominals behind your name. So you got people who are PhD and then Society of Antiquaries of Scotland, Ant Scott, and then Society of Antiquaries of London, and you get like extra little postnominals that you can put behind, and there's some people where like you end up with like 8, 9, 10 because you could just put so many behind there. It's sort of a big deal. I don't personally do that. The only thing I add actually is, so this is a weird one, and it's a tough one because sometimes I get blowback for this, but I also put my email below in my signature, and that's just from frustration from like Microsoft Outlook. Like if someone forwards your email along and they don't have like, in the front, it'll literally just say your name on that forwarded email. So you can never like find that person's email, and you have to go back and be like, hey, you forwarded this to me. Can you also like copy and paste in their email? Cause I can't actually see it because it's just come across as text, literally as their name, not as their email. But I get some people who are like, dude, you just sent me an email. I know what your email is. So I'm a bit torn on it because sometimes I'm pretty sure I annoy people with putting my email in my email signature, but like for a lot of things,
I've never seen that where you can't see your email. Anyway, I'll have to look at it. Usually you can click on the email in the string and it will pop up the other emails. But
it gets buried. It can get buried.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, and it depends on your email. Like if they're sending it over as like a raw text, if it comes over,
yeah.
And it'll just like, if it's in their system, like you're under your name, right. some emails, especially like Outlook does that where they're like, instead of like, Heather at, it'll just be Heather and your name. And so you can never actually track down those emails.
I see. Yeah.
The only thing I'd say about the alphabet soup at the end of your name is you earned that. And when else are you going to be able to show it off? So unless somebody goes to your office and sees the degrees on the wall or whatever, go ahead, keep them on there. I'm down with that. If you got 9 different certifications, go ahead, just string them on there, man. It's cool.
I do want to say one thing. I'm glad you said that. There's one thing as far as titles go. I serve in different ways where I work. So I will change my title based on who the recipient is. So if it's somebody that sometimes I'm just archaeologist, but if I think that either the client or let's see, the agency needs to know that this is the principal investigator for the project, then I change my title a lot. And then sometimes I'm serving in a non-archaeological way and I will change again to some other title. So I do that just because people do look at what the title is. And it's not about me trying to, say, have them think I'm important, but I'm trying to communicate to them who they're talking to so that they know that, whatever my role is, that they got the right person. And so sometimes I'll change that. And I agree with the degrees. If you want to share them, great. I mean, the one thing is if you say RPA, that usually says enough. Obviously, you have a graduate degree, typically. I put RPA on the back because in lots of the emails that I'm writing, people need to know that they have somebody that has that RPA that's required in some instances. So,
yeah, Heather, you bring up a really good point because it's something I'm loath to do. Like I don't usually put doctor on anything unless like I usually pull it out when like someone's being a real asshole, and then I switch it up and I'm like, yeah, you don't call me Doug, it's Dr. Rox McQueen to you, and that's usually what I do. But I also, because I really hate it, because I don't put a lot of, I don't know how to say this, emphasis, trust, kudos. Getting a doctorate is like whatever. And so I don't hold it in really high regard, but I also like, this is one of the problems with like signaling is like, that's my value is I just don't value doctorates, but I do realize lots of people do. And people will definitely treat you differently if you have doctor in front of your name.
Mm-hmm.
And I also do understand, especially I get away with this, but I also understand, like a lot of women, definitely they'll put it in like not. I mean, we're talking emails here, but like social media stuff and things like that, because they always get miss or misses, and that no one ever says doctor to them. So I completely understand that push on that side as well.
Yeah, but I tend to put doctor down on any kind of professional stuff. Because you have it, and it's a thing, and it is important, and it's real, right? So, and you guys know me. I don't walk around going, "It's Dr. Kinkella, please," or "I will not turn around." You know, I'm not like that, and I'm very relaxed with my students and that kind of stuff. But in the professional world, I do tend to put that down because it is honest, is the thing I have, and it's true. The only time I get pissed when people call themselves doctors when they have an EDD, which is a doctor of education, and it's not the same. And I hate it when that's my own little pet peeve. I'm like, don't call yourself a doctor. It ain't the same.
Or JD.
Yeah, but JD is such a specific thing that but yeah, you're not really. It's Anyway,
well, I think JD, somebody earns a JD, they should put that in the back. And actually, I mean, that does happen.
Yeah.
In my the companies that I work for, I actually think that it's helpful. When I see that means usually the person knows the law and they should have a better grasp of the regulatory side of our business. So I think it's a good thing that we should probably go to the next segment.
So on that note, see you guys in a minute.
When you need mealtime inspiration, it's worth shopping Kroger, where you'll find over 30,000 mouth-watering choices that excite your inner foodie. And no matter what tasty choice you make, you'll enjoy our everyday low prices, plus extra ways to save, like digital coupons worth over $600 each week. You can also save up to $1 off per gallon at the pump with fuel points. More savings and more inspiring flavors make shopping Kroger worth it every time. Kroger, fresh for everyone. Fuel restrictions apply.
Welcome back, everyone. So I'm actually going to move off from email at the moment. We're sort of slightly discussing off podcast, I guess, off sound. I don't know what the right term is there. A bit about social media and stuff. It sort of comes up as, there's various different social media platforms out there, and some of them are more based for professionalism, but also, some people use things like Twitter. I'm not going to call it its new name, Twitter, or other, Facebook or other Instagram. I guess you could pretty much use any sort of social media if you want to as sort of like a professional facing account. And actually, if you're self-employed, it's a lot of people do it that way, as their social media accounts are their professional accounts. So I was going to throw out to you guys, do you guys pick particular social media accounts, and do you think about it? Like, as in, do you have a sort of professional forward view, way you post, way you do things on social media? I'll just throw that out there.
I used to wade deep in the sewage that's social media, and then it just started to get too thick, and I started to go down like that horse in the Neverending Story. Except for no one was crying for me to stay alive. They were just kind of like, yeah, watch him drown in social media. So I cut a lot of that stuff out. Part of it was trying to find a job, right? So when I was a PhD student, I was really ramping up the social media, and actually ended up writing an ebook on it that's on the SHA website about using social media and making websites and stuff. And I used to do a lot more of it. And just over time, what I realized is, the way the algorithms are set up, I think we've already talked about this quite a bit, right? Like the algorithms are set up for you to just go into echo chambers. And so they increasingly segment people off into echo chambers because it's easier for them to sell stuff to you that way. But it's also easier for you to get more engagement when you're in there with a bunch of other people in the same choir that you're preaching to, right? So the idea that you were going to reach out and use social media to get this huge audience, all you're going to do is just connect other people who are already ranting about the same thing that you're ranting about, right? But then also the positive stuff on social media gets almost no attention, whereas negative stuff gets tons of engagement. And so the machine is designed to just let you go deeper and deeper into stuff that makes you pissed off and makes you rant, because by you ranting and forwarding and reposting and thumbs upping and hearting and all that stuff, things that you can't stand, that equals, traffic. And that's like what social media is set up for us, right? So when it comes to social media now, I kind of stay away from it, right? kind of like drinking alcohol or cigarettes, right? Too much of it, you will definitely for sure get very sick. Your life will be less good if you drink a bunch of alcohol and you smoke cigarettes, either one or the other. And so I treat those things like the same thing. It's like cancer for your mind and for your emotion. And staying in that stuff is bad. So that's my 3-minute comment on using social media.
Here, mine will be like 15 seconds. So, Bill, as always, maybe just today is my last day on this podcast because Bill just says the exact same thing that I'm about to say. So I agree with Bill again, 110%. My backstory is exactly the same. I do find social media a complete cancer on the self and social interaction and the world. I used to do more of it. I do like none of it now. I do have a Facebook. I do have like an Instagram. I like never post. I never do jack. The only thing I do is I do put YouTube videos up on my YouTube channel. But in that world, it's much more of I make a thing and then give it out to the world. I don't interact very much, in terms of messaging or talking with people in that world. So anyway, that's what I got. Bill and I are of a hive mind.
Yeah, I guess so. But I mean, like I said, you can definitely build your own online persona. Like I said, I mean, it's those things are set up for you to be able to do that. If you're wise about it, you can absolutely create persona for yourself. And if you're starting out, and especially if you're in, trying to get into academia, nobody knows you from anyone.
Yeah.
When they first see an email from you or any kind of article or whatever, they're going to be like, who is this individual? Well, the internet is a super easy and low-hanging fruit way that over time you can absolutely build your own identity online. You can just keep putting tons more archaeology stuff in these different social media platforms, and it's designed to be searchable and stuff. And so like the only one that I'd say for careers that's super functional, it seems nerdy and everything, is LinkedIn. Of course, it has its own spam-tastic messaging systems and a bunch of other, ways for you to get you to do the same thing, clicks and engagement and all that kind of stuff, right? But it's designed for people who are, working on business-oriented things. And when you're talking about archaeology, it makes it much easier for you to put yourself in there. It's a search engine, but it's also a publishing platform. So if you don't have a blog, you can write articles and you can post them on there. It's also connected to your other social media. So, it's getting traffic from multiple different directions, and it's oriented towards careers. So on there's a chance that you can find out about companies in your area, that you can find out about people who are, potentially hire archaeologists, and that you can try, if they actually respond on their LinkedIn, you can try to actually message them and connect with them to set up stuff offline that's outside of the hiring process, right? So LinkedIn, I think, is probably one of your best bets if you're thinking about building your career and using that for online purposes.
Yeah, and I do want to just add real quick, because I do want to talk more about LinkedIn, but I'd forgotten. I just remembered that I do know people who have gotten huge followings on Instagram. But again, it's because they take it professionally and they make little Instagram posts basically that are germane to their profession, So I think what to take from this is to do things that are supposed to go out to the public, like public service kind of stuff, little shows and that kind of stuff, not just bitching in the comments, right? There's a big difference there.
So along that line of thinking, first, think about what it is that you're trying to communicate and what your end goal is. So,
yes,
if you are, let's say, a professor and you're trying, or your desire to be a professor. I was in that world for a very short period of time. And so I don't know it all that, as much as you guys do at all. I do know that there's, certain perceptions that need to occur before, or that are taken into account when you're considered for tenure, right? And so maybe in academia, I think it's a good thing to be putting together, these videos and whatnot. In a professional setting, it's not that helpful. I'll just say, if you're trying to go into CRM, companies are not looking at that specifically. It may be, oh, that's interesting, but it's not something that's really going to get you a job, because what they're looking for is somebody who can produce superior product, who can be responsive to clients, who's technically excellent, and who in a professional setting reads well. not read, but other people can read you well. And so putting out the videos aren't all that helpful for that, if that's your goal. I do think LinkedIn is awesome. And one more thing on that, the videos. Also, you're putting out a lot of personality there that may actually not even be that much of your normal everyday personality. But you have, in order to be engaging and people to watch your videos, you have to have a little bit more personality in order to make that happen. And so you may be putting something out there that isn't truly you, and it might be off-putting to potential companies, right, that could potentially hire you. LinkedIn, I think, if you're going for CRM and you want to move up the ranks into management, LinkedIn is an excellent resource. For me personally, I keep it, just like Bill and Andrew were saying with the signature, as clean as possible. I don't do anything, any politics. I don't put on anything that has anything to do with outside of my professional world, outside of work. So I keep LinkedIn very clean. I do that also with all social media, just because that's just who I am. I use my personal social media to connect with friends. I've lived in different places in the world or in the country, and I have family all over the world, actually, and I want to connect with them. And so I try to keep it as just benign as possible and fun as possible. And I actually very rarely post. I just encourage people with comments, and sometimes I'll post things about my family, but that's it. For LinkedIn, I've seen it start going another direction recently, where people are getting more and more political. They're putting out some of their personal, which if it's related to professional, I think that's a good idea. But LinkedIn really is supposed to be a professional social media site. And so I think, I don't think we would be doing any favors to our listenership if we weren't saying, especially for young in your careers, just be careful what you put out there and how you comment and post. And also remember, whatever you like and whatever you comment on, LinkedIn, more than any other social media, you can see it. So if you're connected with somebody, they can see everything that you're doing. Sometimes you can see that on Facebook. You really can't see it on Instagram. So even if you're not posting something, if you respond to it, if you have an impression or you like it, it comes up immediately in the other person's feed. So just be conscious of that.
So, I appreciate what Heather's saying, and definitely if you're using the internet, man, it's got to be really clean. One of the key pieces about the internet, though, is that you can feed it what you want it to know about you, and then it just like broadcasts it, right? You can either amplify it or it can keep it at a low level vibration. So when you're doing something like LinkedIn, one critical thing to think about is that it's not just a way to show yourself. You can also pack it full of other meta tags and other stuff that'll give you information about like the kind of person that you want to become, like you want to move into these different spaces. So the internet, it's super easy to fake and pretend like you're doing something, but it's also super easy to, set the stage for what you will become. And so when you're talking about your career, a good thing is to kind of look at the kind of jobs that you're looking for, look at the kind of industries that you're looking at, and then in the descriptions of what you do and the things that you've done, to actually use those kind of words if you've done them, right? Of course, it's like a resume. You don't really want to lie. You want to tell the truth. But if you've done something like survey, and it's called a Class 1 survey in the state where you're at, and you've done some of that in your field school or something like that, one way would be to say that you have, introduction to Class 1 survey, and to keep putting that in different locations in your LinkedIn profile. The other thing too that's great about LinkedIn is it's like a phone book basically for CRM companies in your state, for different people who work and do archaeology in your state. And so you can use the search function and find people who are active in your state, people that work for different agencies, and then you can kind of look at the things that they've done in their career as kind of an idea of how they got to where they're at. But you can also start building kind of like indices of people who work at different companies. Now, another thing that's interesting about LinkedIn is like a lot of times it's the people who are kind of higher up in the companies are the most likely to have robust LinkedIn profiles. And then there will be a bunch of people who haven't really done much with it. So if you're starting out, it's good to try to fill out yours as well as possible. So you can also put ebooks if you've written them on there. You can also put different, things that you've written, things, presentations you've given at conferences. You can put those kind of things on your profile as projects and as examples of your work. And then, probably the most important thing when you're starting out is to get endorsements. So at the very bottom of LinkedIn, you can have other people who know you write a short endorsement of you. So, people can use it the reverse way. When you apply, they look you up and then they look through the index of like, who do they know that you might have in common so that you can reach out to this other person, because archaeology is a pretty small field, right? So if you're on LinkedIn, you're applying, you put your LinkedIn profile in your application. If it's appropriate, they click on it, look at it. They're going to scroll through and say like, oh, who else do they know? And then if they know that person, then that's a pathway that they can kind of inquire like, hey, is this worth interviewing this individual? They say that they do ZooArc. Is that true? Like, do you have any idea about that? So what's going on with this? They said that they've, been part of this different kind of organization. Is that true? They can do that informally and kind of get information kind of from your references. Now, so of course, if you're an employer, you can't really do that if they're applying a lot of time, and it's kind of, against the law to discriminate against people based on stuff that you see on the internet, right? So if you see something off-putting, you can't really use that, especially if you're working for a government agency. You can't really use that in your basis on refusing that candidate, because you're not really supposed to be doing that. You're supposed to be focusing on the materials they've submitted to you. But if you're cold calling and you're just looking for pathways to get into the field, it's, people are going to reach out to folks that they know and say, hey, is this person crazy? Or are they good? Are they someone that I should really think about? Or is this just, hot air that they're blowing in my face, right? So LinkedIn, it's got a lot of different mechanisms. And once again, because it's oriented towards people in their careers, it's not like, wallowing around in Facebook or looking at everyone's time vacuum videos that they've created on Instagram and how beautiful they look at the archaeology site. This is, you can actually kind of use this to strategize for your career, build a persona for yourself, and to identify jobs that you might be able to take in your area.
I would just add to that, probably none of us, as far as I know, are in the sort of freelance sole trader aspect of work at the moment. But yeah, I would actually add there's some of those disadvantages of social media can actually be a real advantage in that area. So in the sense of, echo chambers, if you're not real well known, an echo chamber can be a good way where, I don't know, if you're going into GIS and archaeology, getting into that social media sort of area, or those groups, maybe you're into Roman pottery or something like that. And again, it allows you to sort of pick out those little niches, and hopefully you're able to introduce yourself to other people and in a positive light. So, if those echo chambers can be a good way to become known in a particular topic or a particular subfield. I guess the key part there is known. You kind of want to be known in a positive light as opposed to a negative light. But yeah, I was just going to say, I've on the other end of things, I have gone and done projects where so about 2-3 years ago, did a big Illustrator project, and a lot of the illustrators I ended up contacting were people I'd seen on Twitter. I was like, oh, that's a really cool illustration, and happened to have been following them. And so social media can be quite good for loose bonds, is what it's called, or loose affiliations. Essentially, there's a whole bunch of research on this where basically it's better for, getting referrals actually comes from people who vaguely know you instead of really know you. Because the people who really know you, you're close with them, you're interacting with them all the time, you're going to know the same opportunities that they are. But the people who are sort of loosely connected to you will more likely to know about other opportunities and be able to pass that along. So it can be quite helpful for sort of freelance work or, sole trader work. And occasionally it can be helpful for, getting jobs as well if you're just sort of an employee and trying to look to go to a different employer. So
with LinkedIn, look at the certain people that can provide you information that are going to be posting regularly. One thing is the State Historic Preservation Officer. Other, maybe, professors that commonly post. You'll see other people that are connected with them, that you're connected with. And if you see that's something that's interesting to you, or you think it's going to be helpful for you, that these entities are posting articles, then definitely connect with them. It's a little different than other social media where you're really just focusing on people you know or you've met before. In LinkedIn, it's very common to actually be connected with people that you are not connected with yet. And then the other thing is a lot of companies do take LinkedIn, they mine LinkedIn. I mean, this isn't anything new. I'm sure everybody knows this, but it really does come into play when they're trying to find people to fill positions. So it isn't just about you knowing that a position's out there. It's that companies are looking at you as a potential candidate for a position they need to fill, even before they post it sometimes. So making sure that your profile is up to date and that you do have endorsements if you can, if that is something that you want, and endorsements that are relevant to where you are in your career right now, not something that was posted like when you graduated from college and now, your skill set's a lot. Sometimes an irrelevant and outdated endorsement, depending on what the information is, can actually be more of a detriment to you than a help. So just making sure that everything is up to date if you are looking for a job, because companies will go into LinkedIn and they will pull what you call the LinkedIn resume. And I've noticed that some people that just don't, and I don't really put much on LinkedIn, but I'm not looking for a job either. So, sometimes people's LinkedIn profile can be completely blank because they don't have any information in there. So make sure you update that if you are looking for a job.
I'd also say with the sort of following people, generally you have to be somewhat careful on that depending on where you are in your career. So I have a pretty locked down Facebook account that's personal. So I don't usually, if people from sort of work interactions try to friend me, I just ignore them, unfortunately. Or if I know them well enough, I'll just message and say, hey.
Even on LinkedIn?
Well, I am on LinkedIn because I have to be on LinkedIn because I manage the Fame LinkedIn page. But I just have a semi name there. I literally just say, I don't use this account.
Oh, got it. Okay.
Look for me elsewhere. So I have to do something like that. But also in terms of that following, students, if you're just a student, generally not. There could be sort of that professional and off. Social media can be more open and less professional as well. So some people can feel weird about their students friending them or following them, various things like that, or vice versa. It can be a bit weird with supervisors or professors coming to follow your social media. So I think it could be a bit of a double-edged sword, and you should definitely think about who you're following and if there's any sort of awkwardness that might cause.
In the professional setting, it's very typical for people that are in the same companies or in the same professional realm to be connecting with each other. I think it's a little different than Facebook, but I do understand the student-professor relationship. I totally get that. But I think, I've always been connected from people that are my peer group to the CEO, and it's actually helpful because you understand, there's one thing about your career where you're trying to get a job. So you have your career and your environment of trying to get a job and understanding CRM in general. And then when you become, when you have a job and you have a place at a company, having an understanding of the company on the LinkedIn side, it really is helpful depending on the company. But if the company is very active on LinkedIn, there's companies that very much push. In fact, the last company I was in, they expected you to be posting, to be forwarding their messages, to be, talking about the projects that you've, promoting the company on LinkedIn. That is a very common thing. So if you're in the business, it is not uncommon to be connected with your supervisors at all levels.
Yeah, I don't ever connect with my students until they get a job and they're professionals. I never follow them or ever look them up on social media. I never engage whatsoever on the internet with students whenever possible.
You're never going to guess, but I do the exact same thing. Oh!
And when you look them up on Facebook or an Instagram, people know that you've looked them up. That's the other thing that's funny.
Yeah.
This happens on a regular, if we win a bid and I'll always know that who were the other bidders if it's not common knowledge, because all of a sudden I start getting all these all these people looking up my LinkedIn and profile. So just, know that. I know there's certain levels of LinkedIn where you can be hidden, but if they're on the same level at LinkedIn, they'll know if you're looking at their profile. And sometimes that's not a big deal, but just know that.
All right. As we move into slight stalker territory, we'll end this segment and come back into our third segment with some more things on how we do our signaling. All right. Welcome back for our third segment. And this one, we're going to talk about publishing and societies. And so guys, where do you publish if you do publish? And do you actually think about it in terms of signaling, wherever it is to colleagues or other members of the profession? I'm assuming, well, I don't know. Andrew, I know you do publish because you like to. You don't necessarily have to.
Nope.
And I believe, Bill, you no longer have to ever again. I'm pretty sure once you have tenure.
No, at Cal, it's a grinder. You can't stop.
No, never stop. And then also, Heather, because you're in CRM, but also there's a lot of places, a lot of CRM people probably put out as much output, if not more, than most academics in terms of publishing. So where do you guys publish and why?
I think, I publish wherever they'll have me, basically. And publishing is such a dynamic, changing field right now. I mean, like right now, it's just all over the place. So it's funny. It's like I can't even give people good tips, because it's like in 6 months it'll be a different thing. I would just basically say, just write first and foremost, and like write what you need. And then when it comes to publishing, just try and kind of follow what others have done. And how's this for a cliche? Keep an open mind, because there's so much variety there. You can publish on Amazon. You can, publish on a blog. Like we did a whole show on publishing a while back, I think like maybe 2 years ago or something. And that's all I would say. There is no like obvious path in publishing. There just isn't, even the old school. I even find that the old school journals and stuff, it's like, yeah, whatever, but don't even worry about that. I would say just go to where it seems you fit, if that makes any sense.
Yeah. I mean, I guess it's different where I'm at. There is a pretty clear trajectory that you've got to publish. And I don't think that anyone is like looking at the actual rank and saying, oh God, this isn't a high enough impact score. And for impact score, essentially is some shenanigan they invented. That's a combination of how many people read or / download. Because we know that you can beef up impact score by just forcing, if you had a class that had 1,000 students and you force them to download your article, magically you're so much more relevant than someone else, right? But that doesn't mean anyone's actually read your stuff. But there's impact score, which, is some kind of thing they've created that's a combination of how many times people have downloaded it, how many places subscribe to that magazine, and then, how often folks cite you in their writings, right? So once again, with the meta tags and all the other junk that you get people to cite you. So there's that whole piece, but, there's no clear like number of publications that I have to write, but I do have to write. And, at the end of the year, they're going to ask me every other year, at least, what'd you do? And if it's not writing and doing research, which is publishing, then I'll get, not really fired, but like a demerit, right? I won't get promoted. They'll be like, well, you need to try harder next time. And so, when it comes to places, whatever in your subfield is read by a lot of different places, that's published by some of the bigger journals, if you're in academia, if you're a graduate student, those are good places to get your stuff published. The other thing is your own book, regardless of if anyone ever reads it. Writing your own book somehow is like the holy grail, right? And also that it's in some nerdy academic press that guarantees no one's ever going to read it, rather than something that will get millions of people read. They're like, oh well, that's just pop culture, that's popular writing. It could be the same darn thing, and it's published and 1 million people read it. It's on Oprah's book club. Oh, that's not good enough. Nope, that's horrible. It needs to be with the University of Nowhere Press so that they can sell it for $170 and no one will ever read it, right? So those things matter a lot for like my job. But I would say the most important thing when it comes to publishing is if you do a project, you got to write a technical report. And it's really a good idea to follow your state's guidelines of what the pieces of the report are. So if you do a field school, you should write a technical report. No one's ever going to make you do that if you do a field school. But in academia, you should write a technical report because it's crazy the amount of projects that have happened that never turned into an article or a book. And no one has any idea whatever happened with that project. But then like sometimes you'll hear whispers of it like, oh, the so-and-so project. And you're like, well, what's that? Where does that ever? Oh, it only lives in someone's sporadic notes that they never published. So writing a technical report is a critical piece. Like that's the only thing that I think people really do need to publish. And then if you're in academia, talk with your department about how crazy they want you to be and how high the hurdle they want you to jump, because they'll have a metric and they'll tell you what it needs to be, right? So just really writing up your work. It's the true differentiator between being a looter and an archaeologist is showing your work.
Amen. It's essential. It's an ethical responsibility that archaeologists have. And I think that sometimes people forget that from the academic. Well, I mean, they forget that across both sides, but in the academic world, they're doing a field school and they don't publish, and then they don't also put it into the database for that state's, reporting and site records. And, it's really important because without that record, others are going to go there, they're not going to know what has been conducted prior. And maybe they don't see anything and they give the green light on a project. And here there was a village there and it was not known. This communication across CRM to academia and vice versa is not there like it should be. And so the database for each state is essential. You have to update that. And then as far as CRM goes, I always have the best of intentions to publish. I do publish a lot, but it's in that database where we publish. I mean, I'm using the term publish loosely, but I write a unbelievably large amount of reports. Our team does, and just don't have time because the next project comes along and you got to move on. And writing an academic article is different than writing a report. And so having to package it differently takes some time, and it takes a passion to do that. And in CRM, it's not. There are some companies that do focus on that, and I think it's great, but it depends on what your role is. If your role is business development and continuing to bring in work, it's very difficult also to be publishing and focusing on that side of things. So maybe having someone within your company that does that and you encourage that and support them in it. But I have published very little, although I've written a considerable amount. I just haven't had the time to publish it in an academic world. So, but then again, it's not necessary for my position like it would be for Andrew or Bill.
I mean, there's a lot of people. So especially in CRM, you'll publish like at the local journal. So like your state journal, your state archaeological organization, it's the California Journal of Archaeology, Journal of Californian Archaeology. Mm-hmm. I can't remember the order, but I'm pretty sure those three words are somehow mixed together. But, there's there's certain places and, some people use that as a way to get their name out there. But it sounds like for everyone here, no one actually like sort of publishes as a way of trying to sort of promote, show off interest or show off professionalism or anything like that. You just do it for different reasons. Is that correct? Am I reading everyone right?
Yeah, I think so. And it's funny. It's like, yeah, you do publish, different publications for different reasons. Like I published my textbook just because I was like, dude, I like, there's not a textbook that I really like, so I'm just going to make my own, but then of course there's the more academic publishing or the stuff that, Bill's talking about where you got to write up your stuff that just goes in different places. It almost takes a different mind. Like it's a different skill set writing some of that stuff. So yeah, it's kind of every place in its time.
I try not to give myself too much because I keep thinking to myself, I should be publishing this. We have worked on some amazing projects that if it was in the academic world, it would be a tremendous, opportunity to publish on that project. But it's so difficult. I don't even have enough time to do the work that I do have on my plate, let alone publish and package it. And, let's be honest, I can't go and take a CRM report, and publish it as an article. It's not the same thing. So you do have to take some time to repackage it. And for a lot of people in CRM, we just don't have the time to do it. And so unfortunately, there's a lot of work that gets hidden, because in academia, I don't see, unless they're working on a project, I don't know why academics would be going in and looking at the statewide, database on a regular basis. It's not like they're going there to find information or to, be interested, to look at different, just different articles out of their own curiosity. That's not the way the database is set up. So it's not even organized in that way. It's organized on location. So yeah, it's a shame, because there's, I think, a lot of really amazing work that's happening in the CRM world that isn't even known because of that.
Yep.
Well, I was expecting you guys to have a little bit more on that, and maybe my next one's going to be a damn squid as well. But, part of like publishing is also, being parts of societies and stuff like that, and being parts of organizations. You guys, is it again one of those, everyone does it for a bit of work thing, or do you guys actually sort of think about what organizations you join, related to archaeology, and what conferences you go to, and which ones you present at? Or is it, again, something you do for work and it's not really thought out as a signaling professionalism?
I think the answer is yes to all. And for me, over time, again, I'm at a point in my career where I'm pretty like, I just got my 20-year pin at Moorpark College. So I'm like the old man archaeologist now. Hey, come students, come listen to old man Andrew. He'll talk about the 1990s, So in terms of where I'm at, there's certain organizations like the AAAs, American Anthropological Association. I've just never liked them very much. Yeah, deal with it, AAAs, deal with it. So I haven't been a member forever, and you know what? I don't care. And it hasn't affected my job or my career at all, because I find places like that so divorced from reality a lot of times, and we're here on the CRM Archaeology podcast. Like, do they even know what CRM is, or are they busy writing their 14,000th paper on neo-Marxism in South America or something? It's just like, I don't know. I'm sick of that crap. So I'm not a member of them. The SAAs are largely like that in a lot of ways, but not as bad. Although I haven't really been a member for a while. I find that the local groups are the best. Like the smaller ones are the best. Like I'm a member of the California Archaeology, right? Society for California Archaeology. And I love that one because it's local, and it's reasonably priced. Places like the AAAs are freaking expensive as hell. Am I going to dump hundreds of dollars a year on that crap? Forget it. And I do think that some of the younger academics will kind of follow my lead on this, because I think they're sometimes much more thoughtful in terms of like kind of value for money, where older academics with the money, they just keep paying for the AAAs because that's quote unquote just what you do. And I'm like, well, you know what does this really get you? And I don't know, especially the AAAs. I will prattle on about the AAAs all day because I'm tired of them. They need to update. They're still living in 1964, So anyway, that's how I feel on that.
Okay, I feel the Twitter pylon.
Exactly.
Out, coming for Andrew.
I don't care. So the AAA thing, I'm tired of it. Like I'm like, enough. Like go do your praxis theory as it applies to something I don't give a shit about wherever, Andrew, I'm gonna cut you off before you dig a really deep grave. The AAAs they're so powerful, man. They're so powerful. You might come get me in their walkers, whatever.
For CRM, I've worked at companies that really put a lot of emphasis on these academic, because they are academic. I mean, you see the SCAs are probably a little bit better, like Andrew said, as far as having professionals, CRM professionals that are presenting.
Honestly, I find them much better. There's no comparison.
For sure.
Yeah.
But I've kind of To me, I see the archaeology societies, as far as going to the conferences, something that is enjoyable for me. And it's good for finding potential candidates to fill positions. But as far as business development, it's not helpful. I mean, also another aspect that's good with these associations and going to the conferences is teaming opportunities, right? You may have somebody who focuses on geoarchaeology, and that's not something, you don't have somebody on staff that does that. So now you have an opportunity to team with another professional that can fill a need for a few of your projects. And so it's helpful there. But I don't think the conferences, if I go because it's fun for me to do it. And if we're looking to hire somebody, and also to give back, because I love giving back and helping students grow professionally. But when it comes to the business side of things, they're not helpful. So really my focus on conferences is outside of archaeology. So who are my potential clients? So I'm going to planning associations and environmental science, association conferences, presenting at those. I present at those way more than I ever present at a archaeology conference, because you are preaching to the choir. Basically, if my job is to develop business, then that's not a good use of my time.
Fair enough. All right. Well, with the last 5 minutes, so these conversations definitely went in ways I was not expecting when I put this topic together. I did not think we were going to do a whole segment on your email footers. So just to pull that pin in that grenade and toss it in there for those last couple of minutes, what are things that we haven't talked about that you guys actively think about when you're presenting yourself? We've covered email footers. We've talked about a range of things. Previous episode, we did clothing and stuff like that. But what are things that we haven't covered yet?
I just have one kind of wrap up quick thing that we've touched on throughout this. And I think Heather said it a few times. I think we probably all have, which is just to have a far-reaching plan, whatever it is for all this stuff. Where do you see yourself in 5 years? Where do you see yourself in 10 years? And how do you get there? Like, make professional choices. We didn't even talk about, I forget, I don't think we talked about the actual email addresses. You don't want to keep your sexy baby 2009, email.com. Like, you want to have a professional email, name. So I just want to kind of leave it with that. As far as I'm concerned, think long term, think about presenting yourself in a professional manner to build on it for the next several years. And where do you want to ultimately be, right? No pressure. Just figure out the rest of your life first, and where you want to be and build towards it.
Yeah. One of the things that I do is I just kind of take an unassuming approach, and I'm just myself. And you'll find real quick the personality of the people you're talking to, because if you just being yourself, a nondescript person is talking to someone and they treat you poorly, or they treat you like you're a student, or they treat you like you're just some kind of field tech, or that you don't know what you're talking about, that means that person is not giving people respect in just everyday life. Then when they find out that you're a professor and where you work and all this other stuff, and you have a PhD and been doing it 20 years, and their attitude changes, that tells you a lot about who that person is as an individual. And don't forget that when you're having a conversation and they treat you poorly, or they disregard you, or they just blow you off, and then all of a sudden they find out something about you, that's a two-faced individual, right? An actor. And don't ever forget that about that individual.
That's such a good piece of advice. I actually was thinking something very similar to that. So yeah, definitely know where you want to go. Understand that may change over time. Definitely, it's better to say less than too much, because it's difficult to walk it back. When you're presenting yourself, yes, it's important that you're knowledgeable, but more important than that is that, are you pleasant to work with? And so you want to present that. You want to be very careful and protective of your persona in that way. Are you somebody that is going to be pleasant, or at least that people would perceive as pleasant to work with? Obviously, you want to be pleasant, but sometimes you may be very pleasant to work with, but sometimes you project something differently. And so just be careful how you present yourself. And then the other thing I would say in this, especially in this day and age, but it's something that I think we've lost over time, is stay away from politics, stay away from things that tend to divide people. And you can certainly have very strong beliefs on, political topics, but it's really not a good place to be discussing them is at work. And it's just not a good idea. So for me, every team that I've been a part of, if I've had any influence, I've always, through example, never talked about anything political. I've tried to be as apolitical as possible. And I find that people take a big, deep breath and they're thankful for it. So that's not to say that you shouldn't have political leanings or that you shouldn't be active politically. You can be that. It's just not a good idea to do it at work.
I, for one, have been trying to bring the Whig Party back for years, but I'm just getting no traction.
All right.
Do they even talk about the Whig Party anymore?
Yeah, I know. Yeah, exactly. They need to. I mean, where? I guess I'm by myself.
You're just dating yourself. So
yeah, I'm dating myself. 1789 it was.
Oh no, it could go a little later. I think didn't they last until like the 1830s?
I think you're right. Yeah,
they did. But they knew the writing was on the wall. Nobody was voting for them by then.
No, it was 1850s because the Republican Party somewhat replaced them.
It's right.
Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah. I mean, there's a tight 70-year range you've just dated yourself to there.
I totally have
Andrew. All right, and so for segment 4, we'll be talking about the Whig Party.
Once again, stay away from anything political. We're not listening to Heather.
Yeah, well, Andrew's already probably, I believe Bill is giving a keynote at the AAA's.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure after this
Andrew
podcast,
won't be there.
I'm not going to be there. I haven't been a member for years. They can kick me out. Oh, wait, they can't.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure they're going to kick Bill out, though, by association,
he knows me.
man.
Totally, Bill, you're totally screwed
Try
up.
this podcast that's just done it. I'm pretty sure you've just
I hope you don't get
Bill
me in
his-
trouble again.
I totally am, dude.
Yeah. All right. So after we've ignored our advice and went political on the AAAs, I think that's going to be a wrap.
Well,
all complaints can be sent to Andrew Kinkella at
exactly. I didn't say any of that.
Oh my goodness.
What is it? Rate My Professor. Is it the chili peppers or what did they put?
Ooh, boy,
They've taken away the chili peppers, dude.
Oh,
did they?
Whatever. It's pointless now.
I should go to that
really
website.
Upset because that was what you were aiming for.
There's probably people who can't stand me there.
I know.
Bill, you probably don't want to go there.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, man.
We're moving into the last few minutes here, right? I got one last thing to say. This is being recorded on August 11th. It's my son's birthday today. He's going to be 14 today.
Happy birthday.
Yeah, he was a tiny baby when Doug and I first started on the podcast. So it's cool to see, someone who is a baby that was unable to talk now be a fully fledged teen who just won't talk to me.
Yeah.
And also, we're recording on Sunday, but Wednesday is Doug's daughter's first day of school. So the podcast is moving down the road. Boy, oh boy.
Yeah.
Comes at you fast.
Yeah.
It does. My daughter's learning how to drive, dude. That's her first day of school of 11th grade is Wednesday too.
Holy cow.
I know,
Sweet
dude.
Lord.
We're old people on here.
Yeah. Yeah, but that's also how long the podcast has been on, more than a decade.
Oh, that's so
Kids
crazy.
are growing up with the show.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure we're gonna have to cut them some residuals at some point as well. After Chris pays us.
Yeah, no joke. That's all we need.
Yeah, because I'm pretty sure my kids have definitely been on this podcast, coming in as we're talking, yelling something.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yep. All right. Well, with that, let's wrap this up, guys. Thank you to the listeners. Wait, it is just thank you to the listeners, and then we'll see you in the field. That's how Chris says it, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Well.
Good job.
Yeah. Totally did not. put that out as a question. We're just going to pretend like that was said perfectly with no hesitation.
That's it for another episode of the CRM Archaeology Podcast. Links to some of the items mentioned on the show are in the show notes for this podcast, which can be found at www.arcpodnet.com/CRMArchPodcast. Please comment and share anywhere you see the show. If you'd like us to answer a question on a future episode, email us. Use the contact form on the website, or just email chris@archaeologypodcastnetwork.com. Support the show and the network at arcpodnet.com/members. Get some swag and extra content while you're there. Send us show suggestions and interview suggestions. We want this to be a resource for field technicians everywhere, and we want to know what you want to know about. Thanks to everyone for joining me this week. Thanks also to the listeners for tuning in, and we'll see you in the field. Goodbye.
And I think this is where everyone says goodbye.
Okay, goodbye.
See you guys next time.
Thanks for listening.
This episode was produced by Chris Webster from his RV traveling the United States, Tristan Boyle in Scotland, DigTech LLC, Culturo Media, and the Archaeology Podcast Network, and was edited by Rachel Roden.
This has been a presentation of the Archaeology Podcast Network. Visit us on the web for show notes and other podcasts at www.arcpodnet.com. Contact us at chris@archaeologypodcastnetwork.com.